Hello, in this video we'll be talking about the principles of tooth preparation. Before we begin, it's important to understand two important preparation features, retention form and resistance form. Retention form are preparation features that resist dislodgement along the path of placement, while resistance form resists dislodgement in paths other than the path of placement. The principles of tooth preparation act to maintain resistance and retention form onto the preparation. We'll start with total occlusal convergence, which is the angle formed between two opposing prepared axial surfaces, which is the same amount of taper you'll find on a diamond burr. That means if your diamond is perfectly parallel to your path of draw, you'll end up with a perfect 6 degrees of taper around your prep. While 6 degrees is ideal, 10 to 20 degrees is also considered acceptable, especially for molars. More than 40 degrees is considered unacceptable and over-tapered. This results in virtually no resistance and retention and a very loose crown. On the other hand, if a crown is not tapered at all, it is considered undercut. This also is unacceptable as it will result in incomplete seating and inadequate margins in the final crown. The next thing we'll talk about is preparation height. Ideally, crown preparation heights should be at least 4 mm for molars and at least 3 mm for premolars. Premolars can get away with a shorter height because of their favorable crown height to width ratio. Ideally, crowns should be taller than they are wide, at an ideal 2 to 5 ratio. It's also advisable to maintain circumferential irregularity when making tooth preparations in order to avoid the crown swiveling on the crown preparation. And the last thing we'll talk about, while not really influencing resistance and retention form, is the finish line. We'll be talking about both the margin type and margin location. First, let's start with the different margin types. The feather edge margin is a very conservative margin type, but does not really provide sufficient bulk for the restoration, so it's generally not recommended. The bevel is another type of margin that was commonly used with gold restorations. This type of margin eliminates any unsupported enamel. However, if it's done on an apical preparation, it might extend it deep into the sulcus. Then we have the chamfer margin, which is probably one of the most commonly used margin types because it creates a distinct margin and creates an adequate bulk to the restorative material and is very easy to control. Perhaps one of the biggest disadvantages is the potential for it to create unsupported enamel lips, what we call J margins, so care must be taken for that not to happen. The shoulder finish line ensures adequate bulk of restorative material, so it's indicated with materials like feldspathic porcelain. However, it's less conservative of tooth structure. A bevel can sometimes be added to the shoulder to give it some of the advantages of a bevel, specifically when used in conjunction with gold crowns. We get to margin location. Generally, finish lines can be placed subgingival or supragingival. Supragingival finish lines remain above the free gingival margins. They're generally recommended, especially in areas that don't have very high aesthetic demand. Reasons they are favorable are because they are easily finished without being associated with any tissue trauma, they're easily kept clean, and impressions can be done much more easily, and the restorations can be evaluated much more easier than subgingival margins. Subgingival margins, on the other hand, extend below the free gingival margin. They're usually done in cases where there is high aesthetic demand, like the anterior teeth on the maxillary side. However, they can also be used in cases where there's deep decay, or in order to extend the preparation and gain more preparation height in order to ensure better resistance and retention form. That was it for this video, and we'll see you on the next one.